So? Not too bad. Let's see. That's low. Yeah, right? I have to take. I want to take pictures for the husband. I think that's what we have to. Well, maybe start that so when we were at Zion, maybe? Yeah. Well, oh, yeah. Yes. Beautiful. Go ahead. You.
Still skewer beard, or it's coming off it?
I keep it. I usually trim it. I try to keep it. Right. Let's see. I gotta get it back.
That's great.
That's not acceptable. Then I have a lot of responsibility. I don't want Hey, brother. How you doing? Better. I was really like that. Baruch Hashem. Back in action.
That's why it's such a light touch. I do everything was on paper.
You know, it's not as big a deal as it used to be, you know what I'm saying? What? I was talking about it, stayed it's the worst thing I go through.
Instead of just an overall price, $25. Just like I'm gonna can only buy part of my mouth. That's crazy. I was like, I don't think that's not for us. Yeah, like it's a crack. I know what you're talking about. No, I'm walking. And we were just walking. You should. Yeah, yeah. We walked yeah.
No, you're on. You're good. You're good. No, you're good. Stay on. You're good. You want me
on page Kuf Chavav. Skalas Hashem B'Briya. We began this parak last day of Shabbos. The sugya that we're in is that of Ratzon and Bechira. That's the sugya. In order to understand the oimik, the depths of Ratzon, what that means, to want, and what it means to have for a human being to be different from the whole Seder Shtalshlus of all of creation, where everything that exists is in the way of Boirei and Nivra, the creator and that which was created. And in that Seder of creation, there's a long chain of the Hishtalshalos, of cause and effect of how Hashem Yisborach made everything in the world. And everything, therefore, is exactly the way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created it. That's the Seder of the Hishtalshalos. There is this one exception that a human being, B'Shat, Atam Kriyim Adam, and Adam Yisrael, a Jew, is able to somehow make detours from this Seder of the Hishtalshalos and make his own choices. And that's one of the Yesodis of our Emunah. And the question is, how could that be? We're also Nivraim, we're also creations. And a tree, and a bird, everything that exists has an exact mahalach of how it was created, and it's programmed exactly how to exist and so on. And man is different. So we began to talk about this inyan of what it says in the pasuk in Iyov, "Umibsari echze eloka." From one's own body, from one's own flesh, one can begin to have an understanding of Elokus. And the meaning of that in this context is that when one looks at the person, you see the features, the physical features of that individual. But of course, when you remember who that person is, and you identify that person, who he or she is, it's not by the color of the eyes or the hair and so on. It's by the etzem of the person, who that person is the etzem. We don't necessarily remember the color of the eyes, but we remember the color of that personality, of who the person is. Because that's the etzem of the person. The eyes, the hair, all of that's all part of the Seder of the Shtalshalos. Hashem created the bird to look a certain way, and he created the elephant to look a certain way, and he created each and every one of us to look a certain way, and that's part of the Seder of creation. But that's not the person. Whereas with an animal, that's the animal, that's the flower, that's the cloud, that's the tree, and so on. So at the last, not all the way at the bottom, but on page Kuf Chavav, Al Derech Zu. Al Derech Zu gam etzel Orish HaKadosh Baruch Hu yesh atzmus pnimis, the Giluyim Shalom. So it is with Hashem's or with Hashem's light. There's the atzmus pnimis, there's the essence itself, which we don't understand. We can't even talk about. We don't know what it means. Hashem Kivyochel and his the atzmis of Hashem, who that is. But there's the etzem of Hashem, and then there's the Giluyim Shalom. Then there's that which is revealed. Just like there's the etzem of the person, and then there's the way the person looks and things that the person does and so on. But there's the etzem. Ba'atzmus Arish HaKadosh Baruch Hu ein lanu shum hasaga. With the atzmus of Hashem, we don't have any understanding at all. Leis machshava tfisa v'chla. As it says in the Zohar Kodesh, there's no mind that's capable, that's able to comprehend the atzmus of Hashem. But however, Hashem's light is revealed to us in many ways. B'chachmaso, b'chachma of Hashem, b'ritzono, his will, b'daito, b'chazdo, his kindness, and so on. Kol elu giluyim shel ha'or Eloki. All of these are giluyim, are revelations, are expressions, are somehow branches, flowers, and fruits that grow out from that shurish of etzem halakus of God Himself. And just like with the tree, as we learned in the mashal we brought earlier, just like with the tree, you have all of the leaves and the fruits and all of that, but even the bark of the tree and even the shurish, even the roots of the tree is not the etzem of the tree. It's that seed that we don't see, that contains within it the etzem of the tree, and all that can be with that tree comes from that etzem. As far as the tree itself and the branches and the leaves and the flowers and the fruit, all of those are giluyim, are all outward, external giluyim, revelations of something that's mysteriously contained and invisible that we don't see in the seed of the tree itself. So with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, there's all branches and leaves and flowers, Hashem's kindness, Hashem's rotz, Hashem's chacham, and so on. That are mispashit, like the branches of the tree that spread out and that fill all of these giluyim, all of Hashem fill. It's maloi chol haaretz kavayda, the covet of Hashem, maloi chol haaretz kavayda, the chacham of Hashem, the rotz of Hashem, the chesed of Hashem, the Gevur of Hashem. Everything is all part of that magnificent Malach al Haaretz Kavoda. Kach HaKadosh Baruch Hu Ba'or HaGadol Mamalik Olam. Hashem, with His great light, fills all worlds. The Soviv Kalam surrounds all worlds. Mamali Umeir is Kol Ha'olam Kulai, and illuminates all the worlds. Mashmos Hadavar, the meaning of this is She'imnamik B'Kol Prat U'Prat B'Metzias. The person would take any part of creation, any part of Metzias, of creation, and would analyze, would study any individual part of creation. The person would take a cup of water and would study it. So we would come to the absolutely astonishing chachma that is in a drop of water, and that's giving life to that drop of water. Every little grain, every crumb of creation. There's chachma lokis, godly wisdom. Kol giluyei hamada, all of the discoveries of science. All of them are only the chitzonius of Chachmas Hashem. It's only a branch, a flower from that garin, that seed of Chachmas Hashem that we can't see, we can't understand. Isaac Newton didn't discover gravity. He didn't create. He discovered. He didn't create that koach of Mashiach, of gravity. He didn't create that. And Einstein didn't create relativity. There's a metzias of relativity that's in the world. There's a metzias of gravity that's in the world. The same way that now they have, I mentioned maybe the other day, so it's a simple marshal to understand. When we were growing up, there was no such thing as a Shabbos lamp. Those of you who are a little bit older remember that we had Shabbos clocks. Okay, so you would set the Shabbos clock. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. But you had a Shabbos clock, and if you were sleepy, it didn't, and it wasn't going to go off for another 3 hours, you were stuck with it. That was it. So now we have this new hamtzah. It's a gewaldige thing. It's a Shabbos lamp. The Shabbos lamp is a gewaldige hamtzah because it's burning all the time, and you have b'chira chavshis to decide when to turn the thing. So you could turn the thing, or they have the Israeli ones also. You could move the thing, but there are different types. But you could the common denominator of all of them is that the or is there all the time. Is just that when you choose, you're able to be megala that or. But the or is shining all the time. The Shabbos lamp is on all of Shabbos. You turn it, and now you see this light. And then you turn it the other way, or whatever. And now you don't see this light. But the or is an or tamidi. It's an or that's there. It's only a question of gili ha'or. So the marshal, of course, is that when you do that, you're not being mamtzi, you're not creating any light. There's no vayomer hi or vahi or. It's just that the or is there, the light is there, and you're just being megala the light. That's your avodah, is to be able to be megala. The same thing. The Indian that Indian of that metzias of relativity is something that Hashem created by Bereshis. He created this metzias of how the world works, and that Indian of relativity, how it works. But that's Einstein is a genius, but Einstein's genius was to be megala that koach in the world. He was just magal. He just was smart enough to be able to know how to turn the lamp, and then everybody said, "Oh," and that's the theory of relativity. And Sir Isaac Newton, he was a genius, also big Elisha person, and he was magala. That koach of the world, how the world works in such a way. He was magala that, but that's how Hashem Yisborach made the world. There's no inyan of a person creating anything. With all of this talk with artificial intelligence and in there, all of the things and genetic engineering, there's no such thing as yesh me'ayin. These are all very smart people who are being megala koiches that have been here for all of creation. The same koiches that, like what happened? How they, who invented the wheel? Like there was some person that said, like, why do we have to schlep this like this? I mean, it was for a long time people didn't think of that. Like, why don't we make this round and that'll be easier to get up the hill? It'll be easier to schlep around. Or I was thinking about this. why did it take so long for somebody to figure out that you could put wheels on the bottom of a suitcase? So for all the years, all of us were schlepping things like Avadim Knanim and going through the airport, like trying to manage with the suitcases and pulling these things. And then all of a sudden, there's some like Iluyish business person that said, you know what? I think we could put wheels on this. And that's already once you had wheels. So why did it take so long for some people to gala this Indian of putting wheels on the bottom of the suitcase that you can just pull the thing along? You don't have to carry it. It seems like such a pashut. And everybody says afterwards, like, oh, what? I could have made a lot of money on that. Why didn't I think of that? But that's they call it a creative person, but he's not creating anything. If anything, you could say he's a revelatory person. He's a revelational person, which is a genius too. To be able to detect something which is hidden, and to be able to pull the curtain, and to say, here, there's a wheel, and then everybody goes, whoa, and this is going to be so much more comfortable. And it's like that with everything. These are all giluyim. They're not hamtzaot. It's not a bria. It's not a hamtzaot. These are giluyim. Everything is a giluyim. And as we get closer to Mashiach, the giluyim are more astonishing and they're faster. But these are all giluyim. Hemra gilu. So Newton, Einstein, all these people, they were megala as mashakvakai b'mesias. They only megala something which is already in Messias. But of course, the creator and the only creator is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Chachma dasir. Misha writes a livkosh is Chachmas Hashem. Therefore, anybody who wants to encounter, who wants to experience the great Chachma of Hashem, Yechol to lirasas abakol haMesias kula. You could take a drop of water, and you could find the Chachma of Hashem in everything that exists. Ki kulam chachma sisa, because everything has that seed of the Creator inside of it, and the more you study it, you see that there are people that spend their entire lives studying one tiny little part of the Bria. This guy, you have some guy that you have these. I don't know how people choose these things, but there's I think it's called etymology, where people study bugs, or maybe this is called just when you study ants. So why a person wants to spend his whole life studying those things? But he would be very hurt and insulted if he heard me say that, and he'd be right, because he probably would say to me, "Aren't you a mammon? You're a mammon. You're a religious person." I would say yes. So do you know what wonders there are in an insect? It's a murdik hamtzad. Because Baruch Hu made such a thing, and he'd be totally right that there is such a thing that this bug has in it such a chachmas Hashem and everything that exists. And there are people that whatever it is from this Gilgul, an earlier Gilgul, that's taking this person to spend all of his time studying this little piece of the Bria. But from these people, very big things were misgala. Even though it might seem b'shas ma'isa that they're just picking at one tiny little thing. That's probably how Newton started also. That's probably how Einstein started also. But then the megala, all kinds of unbelievable things that Hashem has, in His Shabbos lab. So you have these. So then these people come along and they move it a little bit, and something comes out. There's some or. And then they're very astonished by that or. They see something in the way that the insects are working, and it's talking an amazing thing. When I was coming to the house yesterday, I noticed it's a seasonal thing that by the walk right to the house, the ants. I was talking about ants. They made all their little I don't know. They're called, but they're little stieblach. They have their stieblach, and they're perfect. Their mom is beautiful. They're perfectly made, and there's such bali malach that Hashem has made such a thing, and it's such a beautiful thing too. So a person can take any piece of creation and spend his whole life as kulam chachma sisa, and it's the or of Hashem. So therefore, everything, all that exists. That's one way for a person to connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So for that person, that scientist, who's a religious scientist, that's a very, very, very powerful way that he's connecting to Chachmas Hashem. He studies these things and he sees Chachmas Hashem. So for this person who studies that, he sees the seed of Hashem and how it's mispashet into branches, into flowers, into fruit that's coming out in such amazing ways in this little thing that the ant made. But it's all coming from Atzmus Oira, which is mispashet b'pnimius hachachma. Kach sha'chachma hi mamish is galus Hashem. So therefore, chachma, everything that exists is a gilui of chachmas Hashem. It says galus Hashem, and therefore, that's a very powerful way for a person to be able to connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's one of many ways for a person. There are some people that are inclined, that we see like from the Rambam, that we see that he was such a tzaddik that his had a very strong inyan to be miskasha to chachmas Hashem, to atzmus Hashem through these giluyim of chachma, of chachma, bin and das, and Chabad. That was the inyan of the Rambam, was such an inyan. There are other tzaddikim and other Jews that the ikis kasha to HaKadosh Baruch Hu is through a different type of a gilui of Hashem, another way that Hashem is revealed, a different flower, a different fruit, but all of them are anafim, are branches and leaves and fruits and so on. But the scientist, his mahalach, he prefers his way of his kashrus is through chachmas Hashem. And then you have a historian. So the historian, who's a imam, the historian is miskashet to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the unbelievable hashgacha pratis that you see and how everything in the world happened, not scientifically. He doesn't care about science. He cares about history, and he looks at it and he studies history, and he sees in history such an unbelievable ishtalshus advarim, how HaKadosh Baruch Hu's hashgacha makes everything in the world, whatever happens in the world, it's hashgacha pratis, and he's misragish from that. Then you could have a person who's a psychologist, and he's misspoiled from how the mind works and so on. And that's again not necessarily the science of it. That's more in the area of whatever of medicine, of biology, and chulei. He's more interested in how the emotions are affected by the mind and so on. And he studies that his whole life, and he's misspoiled from a person's emotions and how emotions work and so on. What's all of this galus of Hashem? And of course, the greatest gilui of chachmas Hashem is the Torah, and we have the schus that we receive the Torah. Because the Torah teaches us how to find the seed. The Torah teaches us how to detect, how to find. All of Torah is to teach us how, whether it's in halacha or it's in medrash, whatever it is. All of Torah is to teach a person, to teach a Jew, to be megala, to uncover that seed of Hashem in everything, to come to that place in everything that exists, and to be able to find that ani Hashem in all that exists. So a Jew from the time that he's little and he's studying Torah, he's learning how to look at the end, how to look at the botanist. I think those are people who study plants, right? So how to look at plants, how to look at a plant. So the Torah teaches you how to look at this plant with the eyes of Chachmas Hashem, of Emunah, how to study this plant, how to look at this plant. That Hashem is that Hamimad, that means the dimension Heloki, is Chavui b'Chachmas HaTeva, it's hidden in all Chachmas HaTeva B'riya. Kach shemitoich or HaTorah, that through that or of Torah, Yochel Adam lahakir es nochachus Hashem shebechol hametzias kula. A person can recognize the presence of Hashem in everything that exists, in every word that exists, in everything that exists, every emotion, every thought. Besod hachachma hamafia v'chol ma'asev reishis. Now we come to Ratzon, to Hashem's will. So that's Chachmas Hashem. Me'evel Chachmas Hashem, beyond that Chachma of Hashem that's in all that exists, Yesh Roivet Amok Yosef. There's a layer, there's a level that's deeper than Hashem's wisdom. There's something deeper than that. There's something much, much deeper and infinitely more mysterious. And that's Haratzon. That's Hashem's will. Not what did Hashem make, but why did Hashem do this? Kashem sheritzonu shel adam nogeh b'rovet ha'amok v'ha'pnimi b'yoseh shabo. The same way that the Ratzon, the will, and the choices that a person makes come from a much, much deeper place inside of him than anything that you could see, and even anything that you could study. Try to study the will of a person, where it comes from. But Gam Ritzono Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu Amok Mechachmasa. The Ratzon of Hashem, the will of Hashem, the why of Hashem did this and so on, it's Amok, 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 Mechachmasa, much deeper than what He's doing and what He made. Ratzon Hashem K'mar Chachma, Hu Gilui Shel Or Kedushas Hashem. The Ratzon of Hashem, again, which is made known to us as much as we're capable of understanding, is made known to us through the teachings of Torah, the Nigla of Torah. Hashem wants us to keep Shabbos and so on, and through Pnimis of Torah, we go deeper and deeper and deeper. All of Pnimis Torah is to try to be Megala, to the Shabbos limb, to move it to a place where we're able to see that or of what Shabbos means. Why did Hashem give us Shabbos? What does it mean? Therefore, in everything that exists, is not only the wisdom of Hashem, but it's the will of Hashem. It's the choice of Hashem, that He wanted it this way, Dafka. And that is Mispashit B'Omer Kol HaMetzias. That's Mispashit, much deeper. That's a Gilui of a much higher level of Hashem's life than the wisdom. Even though the wisdom of Hashem is something we can't fathom. The Ratzon of Hashem. And just as the Chachma of Hashem fills everything that exists, every molecule, so too the Ratzon of Hashem fills everything that exists. If a person stops and just thinks for a moment, the reason that I'm alive right now is because Hashem is willing me to be alive. Hashem is willing me at this moment to be alive. And as we'll talk about, as explained, of course, in the Shayich V'Amunah of the Baal Tanya, all the Tzaddikim explain that the means that Hashem it's not just that there's some kind of an automatic thing that you're alive. Hashem, this second, is breathing into you. This Vayipach Ba'achav Nishmas Chaim. This second, He's breathing into us the breath of life. He's enlivening us this second. And that's because Hashem wants us to be alive. This second, Hashem is saying, I want you to live. And kol dover v'dover b'mesius kayim rak mikoch ratzon Hashem shemamid mechayim mekayim also b'chol rega. And so it is with every single molecule. Everything that exists, whether it's a plant, an animal, whether it's something which is inanimate, a human being, everything is existing because HaKadosh Baruch Hu, this second, is mechayim mekayim b'chol rega. This doesn't even mean a minute, it means every instant of it's HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving existence because He has chosen to give existence to this pebble, to this rock. Kach Malamed Maral, and the Maral in his Akdama to Gerus Hashem talks about this. Shehabriya ena kamo yitzira enoshis. The creation is not like a human, some kind of a human invention or whatever. Achrei shenagar osa shulchan. After the carpenter makes the table, ein od tzarach benagar. We don't need the carpenter anymore. After he makes the table, he's done. You have a table, and that's it. You pay the guy, and then he's gone. You don't need him anymore. But shulchan miskayim gam beladav, and the table exists independent of the carpenter. Achar olam eno came, but the world, all of creation, it's not like that. Harotzna eloki, the kaimas of kol rega v'rega, including that table. That the Ratzon of Hashem is Makayim, every single second Hashem is giving life and existence to that part of creation. And that's what it means in davening. HaMechadish b'tuv v'chol yom tamid, constantly Hashem is Mechadish, is renewing Ma'aseh Bereishis. Doma davar, and this is a similar mashal to the Shabbos lamp, but Doma davar lemakarein, which is to a projector, through a projector of a film, shematzik tmuna al mesach, and the projector is projecting an image onto a screen. Nidme ki'ilu atmuna kayemes me'atzma, and of course, the children in the theater they go mishuggah from this, because to them that really those animals on the screen are alive, and they have free choice. That means that tiger can scare that child so much that he's going to have nightmares, because that tiger to the child is a tiger that could come out of the screen and could have him for lunch or something. It's a living creature. But of course everybody knows that it's not. It's just ach im nesalikis hamakarein v'lu l'rega. But if you turn off the projector, like closing the Shabbos lamp, if you turn off the projector, then all the matmuna, then there's no more picture. It's gone. There's no more tiger. The tiger doesn't have its own existence. Its existence is only as long as the projector is meeting the screen. The projector is shining onto the screen. So there's that amazing mitzias of the animals in the jungle. And it's only for Kol Zman that the projector is shining onto the screen. And that means that the fellow who's running it, or the lady who's running it, has a ratzon to keep this movie going. And the second that ratzon is finished, then the movie is done, and there's no longer a tiger. It's only a little bit of a marshal, but all of creation is the projection is kiviyachol, is shining that mitzias and it's with a constant will of that. That's where it's different than the projector guy. Might be able to rest a little bit and read a book while the movie's going, because Baruch Hu is lo yon and lo yishan. There's no breaks. Hashem is every single second there. He's projecting that creation. He's creating. Therefore, you see that tzaddikim were not nispal from things in the world. They weren't nispal from how things generally operated. And they didn't have to be dafka this way. They weren't nispal b'chlal. They were afraid of nispal, because it's the Rosh Hashanah Baruch Hu writes a mamid u'mekayim esarlam. And compared to the tzaddikim, we're like the children in the movie theater, or somebody's putting on a magic show, and all the kids are going, oh, whoa, and the adults are just waiting around for the show to end, because they know that might be entertaining, but it's narishkeit. There's nothing here. It's just stam. It's stam making a show. So when the tzaddikim look at how people like us are afraid of everything and get nervous about everything, they look at us like we look at the children at the magic show. We look at the children that they're watching a movie and they're afraid that the animals are going to come and attack them. That's how the tzaddikim look at people like us, that everything get all in a spell and get all worked up and get stressed out and everything is crazy and how am I going to manage? They look at us the same way that we look at the children in the movie theater, because they see the mitzias, they see the mitzias as a mitzias, which is a mitzias which every single second it's not separated from the hand of Hashem. And therefore, the fact that the science says this and the myth says that, again, there are halachas that determine how we're supposed to. That doesn't mean that the tzaddik, walks off the bridge. There are halachas about how we're supposed to conduct ourselves in this world. And Hashem wants us to live in the world in a certain way, but not because that mitzvah is something which then is spoiled from. Therefore, we know, like there's a very famous Kabbalah from Reb Chaim Volozhiner, with Einod Milvado, that a person would go into that place, Be'emunah Shleima, of Einod Milvado, like we know by the Biskarov, that he walked through the border like that. It's a famous story. That he went through there were Germans all over the place. And the Biskarov, and we know that from his son, that he was holding his son. He said, "Don't be mistaken. Don't stop for a second. You have to stay in that place of Einod Milvado, or we're going to get killed." And they entered into that place of Einod Milvado, and they walked through. So we don't understand such a thing. Or the Ma'aseh with the B'ditch with the Kedushas Levi and the Alter Rebbe, that they were in a place and they had to get, and there was they didn't have time because they were going to do a mitzvah to save some lives. There was shvuyim, there were some hostages, and the tzaddikim had to go to take care of it. And there was a place there was a wall, and they would have to go around like a whole city to get someplace, and it was going to take, and they were going to be too late. So the Baal Tanya and the B'ditch, they were standing there by that wall, and they were talking to each other about the smallest type of miracle that they could do to get quickly to the other place because there needed to be some gilui of something higher. And how they, in the end, they walked through the wall. They had to go through the wall because there wasn't time. Now, if we would do that, we would just get bumps on it wouldn't work for us. And you say, open up wall. So, lots of people have tried to do things like that, and it doesn't work out. Because you might say, I believe that this is all elokus, this is all mamish. Of course it exists, but it exists only mirotzen Hashem. Hashem's rotzen is there should be a wall. But the Baal HaRatzon can make it that through my davening and through my emunah, and through coming to a place of Ein Mavado, that I could tap into that Ratzon of Hashem, which is Ein Sof, and I could walk through there. The same way they walk through the ocean, you can walk through a wall. It's not a meniyat HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Ratzon. But Hashem's made a world and the world is a nivra, and therefore it functions according to the seder of Teva. And unless you are able to ascend to a place that's higher than Teva, which is what the tzaddikim, the need of tzaddik goes because Baruch Hu Mekan, because that tzaddik is able to ascend to a place that's higher than Teva. And when he goes to that place that's higher than Teva, there's no wall. Doesn't mean anything. And when you're sitting in the movie theater and all the children are crying because they see a tiger on the wall or on the screen, they see a tiger and they're all crying, and all the parents saying, no, it's not really a tiger because it's not a tiger. This is a tiger. And the parents saying it's not a tiger because the parents are on a madrega, that they understand that there's a projector and that there's a screen and there's a whole thing. It's not a show. But the children are terrified. The children are watching the movie and they're having nightmares. I remember when I was a little kid, so there was some kind of horror show, and I don't know why it was like this, but every Thursday night for a couple of weeks, every Thursday night I was having crazy things. Like I saw like there were these monsters and things, and I remember I was so terrified of that. I remember from so long ago, still when I think about it, how scared I was, and I was embarrassed. I didn't want to wake my parents up, and I was lying there with a blanket over my head, and I saw there were monsters, and it was all, of course, because I was watching a certain show that was scary, but a child that's so real that the child could get mama sick from it. The child can get sick from it. But then mommy and daddy tell you, no, you don't watch that show anymore. That's a bad show for you. It's not a good show, and that's the end of it. Then the monsters go away. The way that the parents look at the child is the same way that tzaddikim look at us, hiding under our blanket. I don't want to remind anybody what happened during COVID here and how people were running around like mice, scurrying under their, in their holes when there was COVID. Again, I'm not talking about, I always have to say that because then I'm going to have all the people get angry and I'm going to get the rabbis from the neighbor calling me up and everything. I'm not talking about the normal precautions that normal healthy doctors told us to take, which even now we see them, a lot of that was stam, also. Okay, I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about the chumras that people have, the bizarre chumras, these strange chumras of little mice hiding in holes that had to leave grandparents sitting by themselves for a Pesach Seder. You understand? Remember, it wasn't a long time ago. But there were old Jews, even people who survived the Milchama, that died by themselves. Hashem Yerachim. Because of what? Because of the movie. Because of a scary movie. So, it's a scary movie. And to the degree that a person was able to come to a place of emunah during those times, again, doing whatever halacha requires. Halacha, not fear. What halacha requires is a difference. And the poskim have to speak to a responsible medical person. Whatever that meant at the time. Which of course there were all kinds of mistakes. That's not anybody's fault. No tiniest that people didn't understand. It was a strange thing. People didn't understand. I mean, there was a lot of lying and covering up, we all know now. But I'm talking about the regular nice doctor that did what he could. He studied this his whole life, how an infection works. This is a strange infection. So they had to study it. It looks like, this is something we should... At the beginning, we weren't supposed to touch anything. Remember? Without gloves. You remember at the very beginning? And all the gloves people were like, wow, this is unbelievable. Like, they had like their 3 weeks to glove people. It was unbelievable. If you were in that business, you're retired, but for sure retired. I don't know who's making gloves anymore. There was such an Indian. I remember because I was actually Masadi Kedushin. It was between Purim and Pesach. That was when it was really, right? But Tokef, between Purim and Pesach. So I was asked to be Masadi Kedushin. It was a second marriage. It was a smaller wedding. Everything had to be at that time. All kinds of rules. And in Muncie. So I was going to Muncie. and I was low on. I didn't have any gas left. And I was going up to Muncie for the chasna. So I got out of the gas station, and I see there like two other people pumping their cars, and they're wearing gloves to pump the car. So I was thinking, no, I don't have any gloves. So I had this like machshava. No, is this really? What is this Indian of that? Then I was thinking, then if you have the glove and you touch the pump, so then you're going to touch your glove after when you take off your glove. So it's a whole chadgadia. So I just pumped the gas. I said, we have to get into the whole chadgadia. I'm going to wait for Asakash Baruch Hu. I'm going to stop right away by chadgadia. I'm going to go pump my car. And Baruch Hashem, it worked out. But I said, the whole oilam there is with the gloves and with the masks and everything outside, with the mask and with the gloves, and everyone was all suited up for this thing. And I said, I also said, I remember, so I just gave the gas, and I went to the chasna. I said, what am I doing? I'm standing there with the chasna and kala, and I'm drinking from a cup of wine. And we're having, so I'm going to stand by so I'm going to put on a glove to pump some gas. I'm not wearing any gloves by the chasna, so I'm wearing, although people by the chasna are wearing gloves. But I'm not going to wear a glove to make a broch. It's not nice to make a broch in a glove. So this is how, the same way that tzaddik can look at us, not during COVID, like in a regular day, the weird things that we do, because we're afraid of teva, because we're afraid. Again, you have to do what Hashem wants, what halacha says. Halacha says. You have a person that's afraid to go over a bridge. Halacha says you shouldn't be afraid to go over a bridge. Has it ever happened in history that a bridge fell down? Yeah. But halacha says that in this kind of situation, it's a normal thing, hishtadlus, to drive over a bridge. That's okay. That's what halacha says, that it's safe to drive over. Did it once happen that the bridge fell down? It happened. And people were killed, yes, people were killed. No. And in the car also, things happen. Are you allowed to drive? You're allowed to drive. You're allowed to go on a plane, you're allowed to go on a plane. But the people that don't go on a car, that don't go on a plane, don't cross bridges and so on and so forth. This is all the way that we look at these people as something that's not regular, it's something that's not normal. Something happened to you when you were a kid. You saw something, you saw a car on the bridge fall or something happened to you. That's how the tzaddikim look. What happened to you? What happened to you? That you're afraid. What happened to you? It's a movie. The whole thing is a movie. So, and when you're able to connect to the Baal HaRatzon, so then you're able to be in a place of Einot Milvado, so then you're not in a spell from the movie, B'chlal. Not in a spell from the movie. The same way, now moving over many steps over, the same way that when you see a Jew that's acting in a way that's very, very unbecoming, and you're very, very angry, and you're very upset, and you feel like saying something negative about this person, it's also a movie. That's not the etzem of the person. It's not the essence of the person. You're watching a projection. It's a scary projection. It's a scary movie of this person acting out. It's scary. Or if it's your kid, there's a scary movie. It's scary. But that's not good. It's a projection. It's a movie. It's not the kid. It's not the etzem of the kid. So it's like that with everything that exists. Kevan Shapula Lokis Bebrias Olam He Beratzon Gomer. Everything that Hashem does in creation is a choice that He's making. Everything that Hashem does is a choice. He has chosen to keep us, Baruch Hashem, alive. We shall live in good health for 20. Hashem is making this choice right now. Hashem is saying, Ata, and He calls you by your name, Chai. You're alive. I'm giving you life. Here's life. Here's life. Shakash Baruch Hu Muchav B'Maisav. Kadosh Baruch Hu is not compelled by any force outside of Himself. That means that every single second. So Newton was totally right. This Hashem created something that's called gravity, and Hashem made such a thing. And Newton was a religious person, I think I remember, and he believed that was a koch, that was Eloki, that was Elokus. And everybody got upset because they thought that people got upset with him. But it wasn't that he didn't believe in God. He was just saying that this is how God made the world. That the Shefa Shachiyas V'ki, Mikoch V'tzana, it's the Ratzon of Hashem. Shu Kamaitzina Shel Chaim HaMamidim Es HaOlam. It's like this pipe that Hashem is giving life to everything that exists. V'chamayim HaKosav, Ki Rega Be'apo, Chayim B'tzana. There's a moment of Hashem's anger, Chayim B'tzana. The will of Hashem is to give life to all that exists. Even though to us, it seems to us that this moment is a moment of Hashem's anger, But of course, everything from Hashem is Chayim B'Ritzon. Kach yesh labit al omek hametzias. This is the correct way to look at creation, to look at everything that exists. Im anu roim chayim ba'olam. If you look and you see that the world is alive, you see life everywhere that you look. Harish anu roim bekach es hofa'as Ritzon Hashem ba'olam means what you're looking at is the Ratzon of Hashem to play this movie. You see the Ratzon of Hashem. The Ratzon of Hashem that's playing this movie right now. Once we were talking about this Indian, and somebody told me about a very famous movie where they make a person's whole life, which it's really just a movie. I don't know. And it's Kilo, he thinks he's a regular person and a regular life, but there's just some, like people in a studio somewhere, and they made his home, and they made actors are his parents, and actors, the whole people in the town, in this little village. I don't know how it works out. He doesn't have to go for a trip or something, whatever it is. But there's this idea. It's a very interesting hamtzah to such a movie where it's just people in the studio. This guy, it's a Rahmanis. This guy is just like everybody else. I guess knows that this is a show. It's just a make believe. But he thinks that this is really his life. So all the people are just acting. So he goes to in the store. The person that runs the store. This whole place was created just for this guy, to make this experiment or whatever they did in that movie that they were trying to show. But this is all just a show. So I don't know what happened to the guy, but this is how that ability for a person to live in the show, and to recognize that it's Ratzon Hashem. Like I once mentioned, maybe a few months ago, there was a famous American writer. I don't want to mention his name. He was a big mushkas, but he was a very famous writer, and he wrote some very, very interesting books. He was a strange person. So he wrote in one of his books, I mentioned this a few months ago, in one of his books, he was writing this whole intricate, interesting story, this fiction, and then all of a sudden, in the middle of the chapter, he pays a visit to the characters in the book, and he says that he goes into a bar. It's a story, and all these different people. And then the author goes into the bar, and he's sitting with his characters. These are his characters that he created, and he says, "Listen, Chevra." He doesn't say Chevra. He says, "Listen, this is just a book. I'm the author, and I just want to tell you that you don't really exist. You're just my imagination." And they all go. They want to have him arrested and thrown out of the bar. And he says, "I'm just the author. I'm the author. You don't really exist at all. You're just my imagination." And everybody's walking around the bar, and they're serving drinks, and guys are getting into fights. Whatever goes on in these places, and everything is happening. And the writer is a big existentialist, and his whole inyan is every book he wrote is these kinds of things. So the whole inyan is that for you as part of this world to be able to get out of this world, There was a whole period of time. There was another writer, a French writer, that also wrote a very famous book. Happened to be about a plague, and what it means getting outside of the town where the plague was. There was this place that was infected, and everybody in the world, everybody in this place, they lived in that Magefa, and then there was the world outside of the Magefa, and it's all about being able to come to a place to understand that I am part of somebody else's Ratzon. There's a Baal HaRatzon. And I'm an image of the Ratzon of the Baal HaRatzon. I'm an image. Now the difference here is that in this show, I guess maybe in the movie you could say the same thing. I don't remember what the name was called. The movie with the guy, the make believes, the movie set. But he what was it called? Truman? Okay. So it has to do with President Truman somehow?
No, Truman.
Oh, that's what's called. So Truman. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. So No, it sounds like it was an interesting idea. So he also felt that he had complete Bechira. But he didn't have Bechira to go outside the town, I'm assuming. I don't know. They had ways of keeping him inside, because if he goes outside, then the show's over, right? So that the ikka was to keep him inside the town. Had to keep him inside. Once he goes outside, he sees there's a world where there is no Magefa, there's no COVID. Right? So the Fauci and the rest of them, their job was to try to keep us inside that world, that bubble of COVID. So no kids, no school for kids, no nothing. They just keep you inside. They didn't want anybody getting outside. They didn't want anybody going to find out what's really going on. Because if you get outside the plague, you get outside the city. If you get off the movie set, then you're going to know that this is not real. It's just not real. It's make believe. So in that movie, the main thing is to keep this guy inside the movie. Once he gets outside the movie, then the true man, this Truman, discovers the truth. And the truth is that this is all a lie. This is all a sheker. This is all a sheker. What I thought was something that had its own independent existence was just directed by people sitting in a studio somewhere. And it's just a moshel ba'alma that what you and I think is some independent existence. Ki'ilu, what they want to do in Iran, what they're thinking right now in Qatar and Iran and these places, that's going to determine the Mitzias of Am Yisrael. Or what some Russia thinks in Washington is going to determine whether or not these people are killed or they're alive. It's all the Truman Show. It's all the Truman Show. It's all a projection, and it's every single second that Kosh Baruch Hu is mechaya, mahava, mechaya, that mitzias, and those who become terrified, and frightened of their shadow, and they can't. Again, I'm talking about in a way that's not with halacha. So then you're not going to be able to go driving on one road in Eretz Yisrael. How are you going to drive on a road? Because the roads in Eretz Yisrael, some of them, especially in certain areas, are bechezka sakon. So again, if halacha says, right now we shouldn't drive on this road, if the poskim say don't go on that road right now because there's a chezka sakana and stay off that road, then you should stay off that road because that's what halacha determines. Because halacha functions in such a way, because Hashem wants it to function in such a way. But if you're not going to go shopping on Erev Shabbos in Yerushalayim, in Romema or in Ramot, you're not going to go shopping because of a missile. So then, and the poskim do not say that that's the mahalach right now. Then you're just buying into the Truman Show, into the movie. You're just taking it to another place, and you think that Kilo there's some separate existence that's not Elokus, and that's a huge mistake that we make all the time. And that's what I was saying before, that the tzaddikim, when they look at us, the tzaddikim look at us in such a way, like the children that are getting scared of the movie. I said, look at us. That they're like tzaddikim that are being frightened, like children that are being frightened. So that's the way we should look at the mitzias. The last line, Hafaz Ratzon Hashem B'olam, HaRatzon Eloki, Hu HaManoah Shel HaMitzias Kula. The manoah means an engine, the motor. The Ratzon of Hashem, of course, is the motor, is the engine of all creation. The Zekar Rav Kook, HaRatzon HaGodol Shebechol HaHavaya Kula, Hafaz Ratzon B'Bon Kol HaOlamim. Rav Kook, in his own unique way, describes this as the great Ratzon in all of creation, the appearance of the Ratzon of the Master of all worlds. That's what it is. That's what it all. That's the whole thing. Yesh kan l'kudim ushetes shechoshev lahavinosa. There's something here we need to understand. Ratzon Hashem hu gilui shel Kadosh Baruch Hu. The Ratzon Hashem is a revelation of Hashem. Whom is spashid v'nimsa b'kol havayikula. The Ratzon Hashem's will, Hashem's wanting this, is projecting this, is something that fills all of creation. Kamo karnei Hashemesh, like the rays of the sun. Amispashtos me'Hashemesh, u'meiris is kolom, like the rays of the sun that are shining upon at least that part of the world. It's shining and illuminating the whole world. Therefore, we cannot compare in this way. We cannot compare Hashem's will to the will of a human being. By a human being, a person's will, his desire, what he wants, is within himself. It's in his heart, in his head. It's in his heart. Hashem was Megala his Ratzon. Not all of it, not even a tiny, but Hashem's Megala his Ratzon. He made his will known. When you look at yourself, you say, Shasani Kirtzona. Shasani Kirtzona. You say a bracha. The women say a bracha. Shasani Kirtzona. Hashem, you made me. This is your will. Hashem's will is revealed. I don't know what that other person wants. Sometimes it's Mezgala, or what the person does. So you can see. What's Hashem who is Galus of Baruch Hu? The What's of Hashem is as Galus of Hashem. Shefa Shalor is the light of Hashem that's shining. And Avemi Menu, that's coming from Him, His infinite, unknowable self. Lahachis is a Metzias Kula to give existence to all that is. Al-Ken Yeshlam Lahavin Shirotz Hashem Espashi the Meir is called a Metzias Kula. Hashem's Rotzon is illuminating and giving light to all that exists. Mamid and Mekayim also. And it's Mekayim, everything that exists. Kama Moshel HaChashmal, like the electricity. A marshal of electricity. Shemuzram Bakol Harim, that is coming from the electricity plant, from the energy plant, and it's going to all cities. Haruchovas Vahabatim, to all the streets and all the houses. Umanikas Akark Lahafil is called Machshirim, and that's why in the houses, that's why you have to turn on the lights and you have to turn on the appliances. But it's coming from you don't see, but you could definitely follow it and find out where it's coming from. You can go back to the plant and you can find out where it's coming from, and that's not really where it's coming from. It's coming from Hashem's bar. But what you're experiencing in the house, when you turn on this light, it's only his galus of that or that's in the electric plant. Ratzon Hashem hu afas Orosh Lakash Baruch. The Ratzon of Hashem is that little bit of light that we're having right now is his galus of the or that's in the energy plant. It's his galus of that or. But the truth is that every single thing that exists, everything that exists, is his galus of the or of Hashem that comes from the energy plant, which is Ein Sof, which is the infinite one himself. Ratzon Hashem hu afas Orosh Lakash Baruch. Shem is gala umispashet b'kol hahavaya kach shametzias kula. All of creation is kula, is melayer, is filled me Ratzon Hashem. And therefore you could say, look at the note, Yud Gimel. Avshu ulai shahar Ratzon hu kamaloshin ritza. Maybe you could make a connection, which many of the Sfarim do. The Medaktikim make a connection between the word Ratzon and the word ritza. Ritza, which means running. Ritza. Kfi shaha ishon hu ish katan. Like you have words in Hebrew, in Lashon HaKodesh that work like this. Like the word ishon. Ishon means ishon is the pupil of the eye. So why is it called ishon? When you put the nun at the end like that, it makes it into something. It takes something big and makes it, and says this is a miniature. So the way that this word is, because when you look in the eyes, you see yourself. You look in someone else's eye, you see in the pupil of the eye, you can see a little miniature self. So ishon. You say Shabbat, Shabbaton, right? You say something small like you have in the parish. So it's an image of. So Ishon is Ishkotten. Neshashom is Natzetza Atzmi Shel Ha'adam. Ratzon hu Gilui Shel Haritza. Ritza means running. It means movement. It means motion. Ratzon is a Gilui, is a Hisgal, is a revelation of what? Shel Hatnu Halokis of Hashem's Ratzon. That is rushing through and moving through, like the word larutz. All that exists is Ratzon, is larutz. Hamachaya is olam, that gives life to all that exists. Hashem's rushing, Kivyochel Hashem's movement. The or of Hashem that is moving through everything that exists. Ratzon is a lotion of ritza. Yehi Ratzon means may be your will, Hashem. Yehi Ratzon, that your or I should be able to see. I should be able to feel. I should be able to experience your will that's running through this moment in my life, that's moving through this moment of my life. That's the Indian of Ratzon and Ritza. Okay, Misham will continue. Good Shabbos, everybody. Shabbos.